Hello, listeners, and welcome to part 2 of this mini-series with author Micah Losh. For early access to full-length ad-free episodes, you can find me at patreon.com/the Cult Vault and support the show from as little as £1 a month. Please be warned that this episode comes with sensitive themes and will include details of suicidal ideation, suicide attempts, and other difficult subject matter. Listener discretion is advised. For support on this, you can call 998 in America or follow the link in the episode description for a list of countries and the suicide support numbers for your local area. Now here is Micah Losh, author of Mentally Diseased. I can't remember who it was exactly, told me a story about their family had their TV set on like a stand on wheels. So if anyone ever knocked on the door, they could quickly wheel it out of the living room so no one would see it. And I always think about things like that really make me laugh because you could just imagine it it's not funny in the moment because there are dire consequences to things like that. But the whole family sitting around watching the telly and then being like, quick, move the telly. And the people knocking on the door probably have their own version of that in their own home.
Yeah. Well, and you have the hard, fast rules, but then you have all these conscience matters. Like I couldn't eat Lucky Charms because luck isn't real. I couldn't, like, some of the really old Disney movies with magic I couldn't watch, but then I could watch Lord of the Rings, because, and then my mom's like, oh, well, you're older now because I was 18 when the first one came out, but still, magic is condemned in the Bible, and Lord of the Rings is filled with it, but it's ridiculous. My mom would show me like the old Bela Lugosi Dracula films or The Werewolf with Lon Chaney, I think. And then she'd be like, oh, we shouldn't be watching these, or Dracula drinks blood and blood is sacred, so anything with a vampire is evil. It's just absurd rules, let alone, children are being abused. and that's not a matter for concern at all. And there are all these real world problems and people suffering, but they're fixated on entertainment and sexuality and just I think the name of the game is just guilt and shame. And if you think that your desires are sinful, I mean, they have you.
Controlling every aspect of an individual's life, isn't it? How they dress, what they watch, what they do in leisure time, how much money they commit, how much time they commit. It's all of those staples of what constitutes a cult, as defined by experts who have put material out in the world that allows us to understand those things. So when people ask me, what do you think makes up a cult? I always say, how difficult is it to leave? Because if you can't just walk away and there be no consequences, then I think that there's something that needs to be discussed. So with the Jehovah's Witnesses, these people that are physically and mentally out are most likely in those positions because if they have been baptized and they leave, they are not going to be able to have communication with anybody still remaining in the organization. And that, to some people, as you've mentioned, could be everybody that they've ever known.
Yeah. Well, and also, they teach you that, what the meek shall inherit the earth. You need to be humble. And they really do make it where you're concerned what people think about you. So if you're baptized and you leave, you are called an agent of Satan. You are called despicable. Members are told to resist your gangrenous speeches. And you're also called mentally diseased, which is why I named my book what I did. But, I know people that left and I thought they served Satan. And I averted my eyes when I saw them. And I have it done to me now at my job. Jehovah's Witnesses frequent my job a lot. And I can feel them staring at me. They're not subtle. And then when I turn, they look. And of course, I have my mother's maiden name tattooed on the back of this arm and my last name here. So, if I'm washing dishes and they, they know me. I grew up with a lot of these people. Even I saw one of the elders who disfellowshipped me the second time and he didn't look at me. And I just yelled at him. I wouldn't look at me either. It, it's, it's very, I've talked to so many people at my job. I work with a lot of really supportive people. But this one guy, he said, I said, oh, I know that guy, can't stand him. He was always a jerk to me. And he said, well, you should just go up to him and be like, hey, man, I'm doing really good now. And I said, no, he thinks I serve Satan. And he goes, oh, but he doesn't really think that. And I said, he thinks I serve the dark Lord. As you know, it's really alienating when you're talking to people and their face will shift. And it's like, oh, I should be on a ledge screaming like a lunatic at pigeons because I sound like a psychotic. But these are true things that I can prove on their website, you know. And yeah, it's just it's a problem without a solution, honestly, you
I
know.
was kind of hoping that you were going to say that you worked somewhere where there shouldn't be Jehovah's Witnesses frequenting the premises. You know, like you
Well,
mentioned all
I
your
mean,
tattoos. It would be so interesting if you like worked in a tattoo shop and just these people are coming in all
oh,
of the time. And
well, I
wouldn't
do
that be
work in a
something?
bar. Yeah,
Well,
I do
you know,
work in a bar, which I mean, can you drink alcohol? Yes, but are bars a good idea for Jehovah's Witnesses? No. Even though
no, well,
it is,
you might have one drink, but as you said, you can't satisfy yourself. There's no self satisfaction, so you know you wouldn't
yeah.
binge drink, surely.
No, yeah, I just one night there were about 50 or 60 of them, just a bunch of them I grew up with, and they were all around the bar. And I could, you know, when you can feel people looking at you, but it was every single one. And every time I turned, they'd all just look away. And it was so ridiculous. And I knew nobody else noticed. And I just, oh, yeah,
Like a
it's,
pantomime.
yeah, it's absurd. And it, I don't know, it really, it's crazy.
So you experienced the loss of your father. Then you are soon after that you're baptized. So now is that extra pressure, as you said, being held hostage or face the consequences of being disfellowshipped if you break one of the rules, or the elders in a jurisdictional meeting decide that you should be disfellowshipped. You What does your journey look like after your baptism? You've mentioned you were disfellowshipped twice, so there has to be a time where you're disfellowshipped and then you are brought back in.
Mm,
And what did and you also mentioned that you've been a long time member of a number of different kingdom halls. So please paint that picture for us of your baptism and what your life in the Jehovah's Witnesses was like after that moment.
okay. So I grew up in the same congregation until I was 17. My father died. Well, he attended his last meeting at that congregation, and him and my mom actually helped build it during a quick build. So when I was 16, I got arrested for some vandalism. Stupid thing, you know, not excusing it. Teenagers are notoriously dumb. But no one said, hey, this kid, his dad died 3 years earlier. Is he okay? No, it was I had brought reproach on Jehovah. And so I was publicly reproved. And then, and what's really interesting is the worldly people, because I did this thing, met with people that we had vandalized their stuff. They were forgiving. The worldly people that I was praying to my God to murder forgave me. Jehovah's Witnesses didn't. So then I was kind of like marked. And then when I was 17, 18 almost, I told my mom, I said, I don't want to live anymore. I want to die. I've had enough. I mean, it was what, 5 years, but it, it, I just kept getting more and more alienated, and I was more and more depressed. I would go to the Kingdom Hall. People wouldn't look at me, wouldn't speak to me. I'd sit there for 2 hours and leave. And that was my life because you can't have friends outside of it. So my mom said, well, let's have the elders talk to you. Well, they said, we're not going to talk to him. We think he just wants help. And I was planning to kill myself with a sword my mom had bought me for my 18th birthday. Or not my birthday, graduating high school. I'm sorry. So since being an elder indicates approval from God, divine approval, I interpreted that as God rejecting me. When his elders will not even speak to me, I don't know how, if you have faith, you could interpret that any other way. So my mom just said, I don't understand. So we moved to another congregation further south. Now, unbeknownst to me, when you go to a new congregation, they write a letter, but it's basically the elder can recommend and say whatever they want. And of course, I'm a piece of trash who's been publicly reproved and depressed. So it different people, but it was exactly the same. It's like they all had a conversation about me before I showed up. So yeah, I just started trying to kill myself. Over and over again. Not half-hearted. It wasn't that I told people beforehand. And of course I was, treated like a leper for that. I did actually, overdosed on something and I died in my house. They brought me back and I was in a coma for 37 hours. And so when I was 23, I dated this Jehovah's Witness who our Kingdom Hall shared two congregations, so she transitioned from one to the other. And I ended up getting disfellowshipped for, I didn't sleep with her, but I think it would be pornea is what they would say. And what's really ridiculous is I came to the elders with it. Nobody else did. And then they told me I lied, which I should have just lied to them. But yeah, so I got disfellowshipped for the first time for 18 months, I believe. Now, I lived with my mom, so she would speak to me, but she would not speak to me about spiritual things, even although sometimes she did. Like I I even remember when you have to write a letter to be reinstated. And I wrote, well, obviously I want to serve Jehovah because you people treat me like I don't exist. And the elders did not like that. So I Googled, how do I write a reinstatement letter? And I found like a template an apostate had put somewhere. And I just copy and pasted it, and the elders loved it. They ate it out of my hand. And so I was like, okay, is this bullshit? But I never progressed beyond that. Like, because commute or whatever, looked up apostate material, the worst thing you can do. I lied, and through you, Jehovah approved me to come back. But
So
so
not lying gets you kicked out, and then lying gets you brought back in.
yeah.
And it's the same
And
as what Natalie told me, and actually the same as what Daniel O'Brien told me. Natalie's own father, who was an elder, told her how to write a reinstatement letter, which got her, reinstated
yeah,
after she was disfellowshipped for the first time. And Daniel O'Brien, he kind of knew how to write his reinstatement letter, so he did the same
yeah.
thing.
Well, and it's all about, you have to write this letter where like, oh, woe is me, and I did not prioritize the feelings of my brother. Well, I don't really give a damn. Like, spare me. I don't. I mean, as long as you're not, really hurting people or something, I don't care what you do. You watched an R movie, I don't care. But yeah, so then I was back and I really tried. I remember I went to my previous congregation because there were two English speaking congregations and a Spanish one there. So I went to the other one, the other English speaking, and it was the same thing. I remember I went out in service and I knocked on a door and I was with an elder, and I knock on the door, so possibly somebody's coming, and he goes, aren't you the kid with real bad emotional problems? And it was just like, I can't, why am I such a piece of trash for being sad that my father is dead? That's a reasonable reaction. And I just got defeated. And in my book there are massive jumps in time, and I did that because nothing happened. It was just perpetual deja vu. So when I was 33, I decided I was gonna kill myself. There'd been a couple suicides in my congregation. Nobody cared. No one ever cares. They don't ever say, "Hey, let's talk about mental health." It's always that's what happens when you stray from Jehovah. God knows how many people Watchtower has killed with through shunning and not accepting blood transfusions and just mistreatment of people. And I just knew that nobody cared. I had the evidence. I even one time I said I'm gonna go a year without interacting and see if anybody reaches out to me, and nobody did. I mean, that's how much time I had, that I took a year. That's really pathetic, but it's true. And so my mom was like, talk to an elder. And it's just the same. Why? It's never any better. And so I told him that my plan, it was fail proof too. I had like a backup plan if the first method didn't kill me. And he just mocked me. He said, your life is easy. You have nothing to complain about. And the devastation, I can't, that just blew me away. And I told my mom, and she was like, well, wait on Jehovah, thought terminating cliche, platitudes. That's all I get. And he's an elder. He must have meant well. No, this is a cruel piece of trash. Who would say that to someone? And so I just started drinking a lot. I just decided to be drunk every day. I started going to meetings drunk. I really don't know how people didn't know. I think I drank in the Kingdom parking lot. Like I would be in there buzzing pretty good. And like, yeah, I mean, that was probably some of my most passionate singing at a meeting. But like I like to drink, but that was the first when I was like, I don't I can't continue. I can't deal with this anymore. I had no resources because every time I went to therapy, they said leave this religion, which I always, oh, that's the world. So, and you can't tell a therapist, well, I can't give up the true religion and miss out on immortality because you know how crazy that sounds. So it happened. A woman I worked with, we started talking about Jehovah's Witnesses. She had went to high school with one. Well, she started coming to meetings. She started bringing her son, and I fell in love with her, just absolutely, irrevocably. And so she was studying. Her and her son were spending a lot of time with my mom and I. Well, then the congregation, when they found out that she liked me, they really started to try and divide her from me, which broke my heart. And then I was told, you guys are spending too much time together. It's triggering the consciences of your brothers and sisters, the same people who ignore me for years at a time, who flat out don't care that I'm suicidal. They cannot handle that possibly so I was like, no, I refuse. So, and of course I was living with my mom. I gave my mom my money. I had medical debt. I gave almost everything to her, and you don't save money because Armageddon is imminent. So my mom tells me, because I said, this isn't scriptural. I would always say, what's the scriptural precedent for not wearing a black suit? There is none, so I don't care. Well, there's no scriptural precedent for that either. And so my mom said, you need to be out of here in like 2 days. Well, I had absolutely no one to help me. So I moved in with the woman that I loved. And I mean, I knew I would get disfellowship for that. So I went, I slept with her. And then so I was disfellowship for the second time. And they told me I should move out of her house into a homeless shelter. That's the compassion. Jehovah's Witnesses do not care at all. They are inhumane. Their humanity is just bred out of them. And I said no. I loved her son. So we eloped, and now then, how I was raised, people who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't interact with unless you have to, for work or school. So I had never met my, fiance and then wife's family. I'd seen her mom once at a baseball game. So she didn't want to tell her family that we had gotten married, because she got married maybe, or she was married when she was young, so maybe it was that, whatever. So she didn't tell her parents for over a year, which I did not handle well, and my drinking exploded exponentially.
It's more of
And
that
I
double
just,
double living, double life scenario.
yeah, well, I mean, I rejected immortality for this woman. Whether or not it was true, that's what I believed. You'd be hard pressed to find something more romantic than that. And then not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just true. And then the fact that she won't tell her family, the only way I can interpret that is rejection. Now, today I would have been like, forget this, I'm divorcing you. But when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you can't get divorced unless immorality has occurred. So it just, and when you're disfellowship, you're told you're cut off from Jehovah, so you can't pray to him. You have absolutely no support. I don't have my mother. I don't have friends. And the woman I love won't tell her. And it just broke me. And so I just started spiraling, drinking. I mean, when I was drinking 24 beer a night, then I went to vodka, and then vodka, like a bottle of that wasn't doing it. So then I was drinking bourbon, scotch, and it just went on for years and years. I was reinstated after 27 months. It was 2 years and some change, but yeah, because every time you're disfellowshipped, it's got to be longer than it was the first time. Like, I've never known of anybody who, was disfellowshipped 9 months and then another time disfellowshipped only 7 or something.
During this time where you are disfellowshipped, you went into the relationship with your girlfriend, then wife, knowing that you were going to be disfellowshipped, especially when you moved into her premises.
Yeah.
But you're still holding on to the belief that Jehovah's Witnesses don't get divorced, so you can't get divorced, even though you're not practicing at that point. The
Yeah.
the lifelong teachings and doctrine are ingrained into you at that point. So you're still living your life by that rule book.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you're thinking, well, and then too, when you're the husband, you're the spiritual head. So if you're not teaching your family about Jehovah, he'll kill you and he'll kill your family. And we ended up we'd been married a little less than a year, and my as she got pregnant. So um, when my son was born, that was just another. It became very important to me because I never had anything other than my parents, and then my dad died. I wanted my son and my stepson, because I never forbid my family, my wife or ex-wife and stepson, from seeing their family, but I would tell them, well, this is what Jehovah says. You can do what you want, but no, I don't agree. And because you think they're choosing death, even though it's not reasonable, that's what you think. And so I guess, encourage them, but I would just try and apply scriptural principles. Like, Jehovah doesn't want you doing these things or celebrating, but I really wanted to, like, be able to give my kids like a multi-generational family, and because I never had that. So I think that was part of it. And but I was seeing a lot of cracks, because I was going to congregation A. Well, when I was disfellowshipped, we started going to congregation B, and things I had been told in one congregation were not told in the other. And so, same building, same small hick town, but I'm very clearly seeing that there is not this great hand at work making everything um, match up. It's not happening. So I'm really struggling, but I don't know. I didn't want to go back. I didn't miss it. I missed a few people and I missed my mother, but the lifestyle, none of that was missed. It was just, it's like, oh, well, now, because I've talked to numerous Jehovah's or ex-JWs where their parent will text them, they'll be like, you're killing your kids. That's a real thought that you think. It's not, let's have a birthday and celebrate life. You're murdering your child. And the moment I saw my son, I knew I would kill for him. I knew I would do anything for him. And the night he was born, he had respiratory issues. They flew him to the children's hospital. Now, I was disfellowship. My mom was there, but because my ex-wife had some complications, she couldn't leave the hospital. So as my mom's driving there, she tells me if they offer my newborn son blood, to deny him, even if he dies. My mother does not love my son. She tried to get me to martyr him for Watchtower the night he was born. They're just, that's not love. They're incapable of even understanding. But Jehovah's Witnesses are taught hatred, but they're told it's love. It's just like, when you have somebody who's racist and they take their kid and say, look at those filthy people. It's taught. You're just taught hatred. And when you buy into it as adults, like my parents did, I don't think you can be saved. But yeah, that was a really rough time.
Did the cracks manifest into your decision to walk away finally and leave the organization behind?
Well, so I didn't actually walk away. My drinking was just, I was drinking a lot, and it, going on pretty much for 7 years. I would say out of that time, it seems way more, but maybe 30 of those days I was sober. Maybe. I mean, I was waking up drunk. I was just always drunk. Um, I would do the things I needed to do, and then I just get blackout drunk because I just couldn't deal with my reality. And I never got over that elder mocking me. And I thought about him doing that to my stepson or my son, and just hatred began. So just growing inside of me. And when I talked about it, nobody cared. Nobody cared if people were killing themselves. So I confronted that elder. This was during COVID over the phone. And he said that he didn't say what he said, and he said another elder was there. Now, I had been on Reddit reading about people saying, they were molested and it was covered up, and when they came forward, so the fact that he would cover that up and get another elder to lie and say they talked to me in person, because he said we spoke in person and it was on the phone. So I hung up on him, and then he called me back, and I ended up threatening him with violence if he ever called me again. I was just living. I wanted nothing to do with him, and I knew where he lived. I didn't go and attack him. I just, the way he spoke to me. So it ended up I was banned from meetings. The elders called me. I thought they were going to disfellowship me over the phone, but they wanted me to apologize to him. And I said, so if I was raped, would you want me to apologize to my rapist? And they said, well, are you saying he raped you? I said, no, but like mocking someone who says, I'm desperate and want to kill myself is abuse. I'm not comparing the two, but why would you want me to apologize to him? Like, he's not a good person. Well, they told me I could attend meetings through Zoom, but physically coming to the hall after COVID would not be allowed. And my mother defended that decision. She blocked my number, and my drinking, yet again, that was another just jumping off point. And then in a blackout, I made a mistake and I wound up in jail. I grabbed my stepson, didn't let go of him, fell on him, terrorized him, and he called the police on me. Thankfully, I didn't do any permanent physical damage. But so I woke up in jail, and they had to tell me why I was there, or they told me my charges. I didn't even know who I had done it to. It could have been my little boy who was 2 at the time. And, it's, you can't take things back, but if I could take anything back, one thing in my whole life, it would be that. So I was in jail, and I reached out to my mother, because I don't know that many phone numbers. Who really does? And she filed a no contact order against me. Said she, painted me as a monster. I spent 77 days in jail. And I mean, the system threw me under the bus. I had a public defender who barely spoke to me. I didn't know anything really about legal issues. So I signed a plea bargain, but there was a no contact order with my stepson. So that, which I didn't realize that until it was in front of me, and I just wanted to see my little boy. At least I could see him. So I was homeless for 3 days. Now, while I was in jail, my car got repossessed. I didn't realize that. So I thought I could at least sleep in my car. And so I got out and I had nowhere to go. No Jehovah's Witnesses cared that I was homeless in winter. I cannot, I felt terror so profound. Like I just don't even know if I ever even felt afraid up to that point or since. And I ended up getting into a sober living facility. And so you have to, most of the people in there have absolutely no self-control. For me, I had decided I'm not going to drink. I tried to get into a treatment facility. They said, you've been sober too long, over 30 days. Well, someone offered me hand sanitizer so I could eat it and say I'd relapsed and get admitted. But I had already promised my wife I would never drink again. I told her if I ever drink again, don't ever let me see my stepson or my little boy again. And I meant that. And so I had dealt with the issue. I realize that now. But then when you have to surrender everything, which fine, all I've done is follow stupid rules in a cult my whole life. I can surrender my phone and my debit card, that's fine. I never got in any trouble there for breaking the rules. Like I cleaned, I did my chore. But when I started going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, which were mandatory, it felt very similar.
Yeah.
And in my brain, I said, okay, so there are fewer teeth, more tattoos, everyone's cursing. It's a completely looking demographic but why does it feel so familiar? And so after I had been there, there were like numerous stages in this group. So after the first one, you got your phone back because you could only make supervised phone calls, no internet access. And I really began researching Jehovah's Witnesses sober, because when I had looked before, I would get drunk because you really think, oh, I look at a website and it says something negative about Jehovah's Witnesses and there's demonic influence that will warp your mind. The fear is real. It's palpable. There were times I would turn, or toss a magazine. Oh my God. And then I began looking up, tactics that cults use. And I think I had a list of like 10 or 15. And even mind control used in like Chinese war camps during World War II. And it was just like reading my childhood. Every single step was done to me. It was mind blowing to me. And it really, and I even looked about how like, there's an order to it. Once you get people to accept this one thing, that this is the truth, or like imposing a double bind where now you know the truth, so if you don't obey it, Jehovah will kill you. But also Satan isn't happy that you're learning the truth, so he's going to target you. And it was just like, wow, all of these layers started coming off. And then when I'm in AA, because I believe AA is very much a cult too. I don't think it's as sinister or as well organized, but it has a lot of the markers, and it's all about God. Whether God with a capital G means the creator. And when I would question that, they'd say, well, you think too much. You're not open-minded. I'm like, well, you're not dealing in reality. This guy wrote this book. He knew what that word meant, And so that was kind of the process where it was a really slow, painful one for me. I really don't know if I wouldn't have been rejected and left to die on the streets if I ever would have seen through it. That's how thoroughly I was brainwashed. People underestimate the power of propaganda. Some people see through it. Some people say they see through it. Good for them. But I didn't. And it was funny when I reached out for them in my most desperate moment, they did not care. But then later, they invited me to the Zoom memorial that first year. And then a month before my book came out, my mom sent me a letter, bereft of emotion. I could write you a letter with more feeling in 5 minutes, inviting me to return to Jehovah. And also it had a thing telling me it's likely I'll get cancer in the next decade, which is charming, based on all of the family history. Not, it even said contact people wherever you live. I mean, she sent it to this address, but if I would have got that in jail, I probably would have gone back. I can't say for sure, but it seems pretty plausible, but never. I mean, now I put out a book. I don't know if my mom knows about it or anything, but that's like the ultimate for me, just the rejection, stay away. I don't need that toxicity. I don't need that abuse. But yeah, I just don't know if under any different circumstances if I would have left, because I wanted to believe it was true, and I did believe it was true.
It's a pretty extreme set of circumstances that you had to find yourself in order to break away from that movement. And I think that really speaks to the stronghold that these religious groups have their members in, not just through the guilt and shame that you talked about, but also the cultivation of fear through, not being reunited with your father, or not having immortality, or finding yourself being murdered by the God that you've served your entire life on the day that they
Yeah.
decide to come back and carry out the end of the world. To lose that relationship with your mother, it's like grieving all over again for the loss of a parent.
Yeah.
It's very callous to send a letter to your child, just probably under the instruction of the elders.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's even being subjected to sort of mistreatment herself, because by association, your son has released it, or by association, I don't know if they tell her. She might have been encouraged to reach out to you and told that if she can't get you to change your mindset or take back your words, then she might suffer consequences herself. And of course, this is just speculation because you're not in contact with your mother. But I think
Yeah.
that it's plausible that sort of thing could be taking place.
It is. Now, their public stance is, of course, have nothing to do with these despicable apostates. And when, I was speaking out against, I mean, they claim 8.6 million members. Now you have PMOs, they could have inflated numbers, but to think that you are potentially an enemy of millions against what I don't know how much money Watchtower has, millions at least. That's a daunting thought, to publicly challenge these now 10 men recently. They just elect or anointed two new members of the governing body. But my mother still babysits my stepson and son. Now, I haven't spoken to my stepson. I couldn't while I was on probation. I completed that quite a while ago, I think. I think it was last September. But like for me, it was like, well, I love my stepson very much. Now, of course, I kind of got painted as a monster, and then people were like, "Oh, you did that to him because he's your stepson and you didn't love him," which really is a load of crap. My ex-wife used to even tell me, she would say, "You prefer him to your own son," which wasn't true. Just my baby wanted nothing to do with me, and I have a tattoo, a portrait tattoo of my stepson. I don't have one of my little boy. Like I really fell in love with him too, and it was just it it could have just as easily have been a 2-year old. And that was, for me, it's like, wow, my drinking has got out of hand, because that's not who I am. What? Like, I couldn't believe that I had done that. So I was like, well, I'll never do that again. Nobody cared. It all fell apart. But so my mom babysits them, and she's tried to get them to join. Now, my ex-wife doesn't want to be a member. My stepson doesn't. He's 13 now. But my son just turned 5. And I know that my mom will push that on. He's even told me she shows him propaganda cartoons. Now, the last time I tried to reach out to my mother, she filed a no contact order and, said things that just painted me as a monster. I go into that in my book. So there's really nothing I can do. I've been rebuilding my life, and I lost my car. I paid off 2/3 of my debt, but I was like, what happens if I die? I mean, I know about all this cancer history. I don't live in a great part of town. There are drug addicts and insane people everywhere. And it really was reprehensible to me to think about me dying and that same thing being done to my little boy, if you want to see your dad again. And so, but I also, who wants to challenge a cult? It's a burden. No one, I can't imagine most people really want to do that. And I was really struggling with what to do, because I was doing all this research about it, and I had proven that I didn't believe it, and I found out all these things that I never learned about Watchtower that were hideous to me. And this girl I worked with, this young girl, she just said, "What was it like?" And I don't know why it just registered with me that I was like, normal people have absolutely no idea what I've been through. And so I was like, maybe there's merit to this. And then when I told her, she was kind of like, oh, well, I know to stay away. And I put this evil out into the world. I proselytized for decades. So that was part of it. And also for my stepson, I wanted to do I felt like I failed him in an epic way. So how do I apologize in an epic way? And the biggest way I could think of is you write a book where you own your sins and mistakes. And I end the book with there's a letter to him and a letter to my little boy. And I feel like maybe that public form of apology, I mean, I'm kind of the mind where I just haven't reached out to him because I don't know what I would say. And I don't know. I just feel like if he never wants to speak to me again, that's his right. That's his, prerogative. But I just wanted to help expose Watchtower. And I know that most people, when I was talking to in the XJW community, most of the people I was interacting with left under better circumstances than me. And so I just felt like I don't know, I felt I had to tell my story. I was anonymous online until the day it came out. I published it on my 40th birthday, which, for me, that was reclaiming that day. I'd never celebrated it before. And so I do know, like, as far as they do have apostasy trials, but if they have clear evidence that you're an apostate, they can disfellowship you in absentia. And of course, what they say now is, so and so is no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't use the word disfellowshipped anymore from the stage, I think, for legal reasons. But I could be disfellowshipped for the third time. I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. So yeah, I mean, it totally could have been, but I don't think anybody really knew who I was. I find it ironic that it came out, or I received that letter on November 19th, and December 10th, my book came out. That was really close. So, but also, I don't know. I've been told by people there's a department in Watchtower, their headquarters, that like observes
Yeah.
apostates. And so I kind of like to think that like I'm on a list somewhere, and they're like, oh, look, like I hope it pisses them off that you call me mentally diseased, and that's what I'm going to call myself. Like, I'm going to own that. You're not going to use that against me.
A
So
book that details all the wrongdoings of an organization that claims to be perfect.
yeah, and it's there are a lot of different voices in the XJW community. Certainly, I think there need to be more female voices, but also, you have people that were gay or bisexual or that are, but they can't act on it, and they have to pray away that part of themselves. And they even, where I grew up, they would call people NPGs, non-practicing gays. Like everybody knew that they were gay, but they didn't act on it, so it was okay. And that must be really horrible to be praying away a part of yourself. And I don't know, it's been cool since it's come out. I've had a few people reach out to me, but I really hope that, more people will be encouraged to share. Because I feel like a big part of my story is just the grief and the depression and how it's criminalized. And just how this organization failed me at every single major point in my life when I needed them. And I mean, it even made my mother, I don't want to say she's a failure as a mother, but you abandon your child every single time they need you. You even condone the abuse, the mental torture from these people. And, she doesn't know any better. It doesn't do anything to make me less angry. But it's really difficult because sometimes I see ex-JWs talking about, well, how can I wake up my sister or my cousin or whatever? I don't really think you can. I think people are tethered to this religion by something so unique, and more often than not, it is, paradise or the resurrection. But I don't know. I feel like some people, you have people that were in like, maybe doing hardcore drugs, and then they become a Jehovah's Witness, and they're like, my life is better. But you also have people that, if they were like, my mom just turned 70. If she was to wake up, would she really be better off? To realize her husband's never coming back. She's never gone on a date since the day he died. She expects to be his platonic friend in paradise because resurrected people can't get married. And you've shunned your son. And I don't even know how. I don't feel like our relationship could ever be repaired, honestly. I would never trust her. It's almost like she's replaced me with my son. Some of the things he tells me that she sings with him or does with him, that's what she used to do when I was a kid. You don't care about your son because you're okay with God murdering him if he doesn't serve him. Yet again, problems without solutions.
That is the end of part 2 of this mini-series with author Micah Losh. For more information on Micah's book Mentally Diseased, you can follow the links in the episode description. And to get in touch with me, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast.